Welcome to Do What Matters Most. This is the third episode in the series, Don't Let Your Career Hurt Your Kids. While a certain amount of time is necessary for the task of rearing children, there are many things parents can do to make more effective use of their parent time. In this episode, learn about the warmth quotient, the solution orientation, and what it means to make contact with your children. Spend less time solving the problems that are created when you don't make the best use of your time.
When we're busy, we try to make the best use of our time possible. Some people actually make it sort of a sport or a hobby to see how much they can get done in a certain amount of time. When it comes to families, however, and the potential risk that people's careers have to the rearing of their children, we try to make efforts to use our time the most efficiently possible. Quite often, however, busy parents bring home their motivation to get things accomplished, and they bring that same motivation at home to their children. So when they walk in the door, they'll say, has this been done? Has that been done? And so forth. And then it's also the case they're also very concerned about important rules and values that need to be followed, and so they will emphasize that. In many cases, however, one of the reasons why careers and our efforts to be successful in them can harm our children is because we forget about the people part or the interpersonal part, the relationship part between parents and children, and how to make that the most effective. It is likely true that there is a certain amount of time that is necessary for a child's growth for parents and children to be together. It is also true, however, that there might be more effective use of parents' time that would allow them to be successful with their children and successful in their careers. The purpose of this episode is to describe something called interpersonal efficiency, or making the best use of our people time. In this episode, I'm going to describe the warmth quotient, walking around parenting, and a solution orientation for solving problems. I am hopeful that this will enable really busy parents to make small adjustments in how they deal with their children so their children do not suffer because parents are working hard to be successful in their careers. All of us have exactly the same amount of time, but we do not all make the same use of it. In recent years, for example, time management programs and schedule planners have succeeded in showing us it is possible to better organize ourselves and accomplish more. They permit us to keep track of what we've started and finished, and to make a detailed schedule of events. The rationale for this is quite simple. Getting more done in less time is the measure of efficiency. While this might be true as far as work's concerned, it is less so where home and family are concerned. I'm in favor of being organized and personally efficient with work, but if carried too far, this value teaches us that personal success is in completing tasks, not in realizing fulfillment or success in our relationships. High-quality relationships cannot be planned in detail because they require flexibility and an immediacy which often interrupts the schedule rather than completes it. A busy mother, for instance, cannot continually put off her children's requests for attention in order to do a business report, clean a kitchen, or finish vacuuming. Busy fathers sometimes have to ignore work on their schedule in order to answer phone calls, provide transportation, and attend Little League games. Those who successfully manage work and home, however, are fairly time-conscious and efficient when it comes to getting work and household chores done. They are also efficient in another way. They learn how to organize time for spontaneous attention and to be interpersonally efficient, that is, make good use of their people time. This means they use the time available to achieve high performance, but also to participate and create in quality relationships. So let's take a look at the first item on my list, walking around or parenting around management. In recent years, business managers have been taught to manage by getting out from behind their desks and walking around, meeting and talking with the people they supervise. It takes a little time, but offers many possibilities. For one thing, it allows the manager to keep abreast of what is happening in their departments. If someone has a problem, it can be resolved much more quickly. If help is needed, it can be given right then. If someone is apprehensive about something, it can be talked about before the concern grows too large. Praise and compliments can be given. A good manager might do this once each day. This procedure seems efficient because each walk-around trip does not take much time and increases the frequency of contact between people, instead of making this connection only during scheduled meetings. Instead of being cloaked in a busy schedule, these managers get out into the place where the work is being done and frequently reinforce the tie between them and their coworkers. This same principle can be applied by someone at work who is not a manager. We can learn about our coworkers, tasks, and what might be done to help them. We can compliment, praise, and give interest and attention. In other words, we are managing time by staying in contact with one another and maintaining important relationships. Why? Because maintaining important relationships takes less time, I will repeat this, than solving problems when we don't do that. At home, successful parents may apply the principle in a different way. It only takes a few minutes to visit with each family member during the course of an evening. A parent might be a 1-minute parent who talks briefly with each child, learning about the day, activities, and tomorrow's plans. There is no schedule for emotional needs, however, and so parents need to expect a variety of experiences when this happens. Personal concerns can be talked about much longer than a minute, and encouragement can be given to one another. In all, it might take less than an hour, except on those occasions when deeper conversations are needed. Even brief contact, if frequent, is better than no communication or conversation. It is more efficient because it allows parents to stay aware of their children's lives and to be involved with them. I'll always remember an executive of a company who left early, and when someone asked, he said, "Well, I went home last night and my 17-year-old daughter had a date with somebody and I didn't know who she was going with. And in fact, I didn't know how she was doing in school. And it shocked me to find out how much I was missing in my daughter's life. So therefore, I'm quitting." Now consider the benefits of this approach. Not the quitting, but the approach of making good use of your people time. Every child wonders from time to time about whether he or she is loved. This worry can turn to a real belief if it is left unattended. When children conclude they are not loved, it is often very difficult to convince them otherwise. Frequently, children will carry this suspicion for years, even when parents try to persuade them otherwise. Frequent communication reduces fear and builds confidence about the meaning of love and whether or not children are in fact cared for. Well, evaluate the results. It is fairly consistent. Every family member will soon develop an expectation of attention. It helps every individual to know there is some time for them, where their needs and desires can be addressed. It prevents the anger and resentment children and spouses feel which result from poor communication and contact. It can eliminate the hurt that results when someone believes she or he is not cared for or loved. This idea has another application for parents. As soon as we arrive home, for instance, we can make contact with children and spouse. Have a brief conversation before doing anything else. When a parent travels frequently, it is even more useful to schedule a debriefing session as soon as family members are reunited. Now contrast that with a busy parent walking into the house with stuff to do and saying hello briefly and then rushes to a place where the last-minute details of some job need to be finished, or is tired and exhausted and wants to go sit down and rest and not talk to anybody. What I'm proposing is that it is more efficient overall to visit and make contact with people as soon as you walk home than it is to wait and risk the negative possibilities. It may only take a few minutes, but the timing of it's very important. If such a conversation happens as soon as family members reunite, it signals the importance of the relational parts of the family. It is a way of signaling that people are more important than anything else. It is an example of making good use of your people time. Next, I want to present an idea that's pretty familiar. It's called a solution orientation. People who are interpersonally efficient use a solution orientation. This means that instead of meeting problems with recriminations, blaming, and defensiveness, or trying to find out who caused them, successful parents respond to these problems by searching for a solution. The reason for having a solution orientation is easy to understand. It's just simply better use of people time. Suppose at work you're talking with an unhappy customer. The customer is upset about poor service, unsatisfied about the product he purchased. He may also want a pound of flesh or satisfaction after the inconvenience he has experienced. We could become defensive about his accusations and even retaliate if his exasperation becomes too intense. Or we can use our time to push toward a solution which will satisfy. The solution orientation requires that we listen, communicate some empathy or understanding. Secondly, it requires that we ask and find out what the other person wants or desires. This is not an easy question to answer. Many angry children about what has happened think more about that and the cause of it than you do about a solution. You may need to ask the question several times in different ways and even make some suggestion. This might sound like, well, maybe if we did, or perhaps this would help. A solution orientation is very useful with coworkers and supervisors. People are often thrown together where they have to work closely in very intense situations. It is understandable that certain problems might result. And frankly, the less we manage our people time, the more likely we'll focus only on the problem, hoping to learn who caused it and so forth, and who to affix blame for it. Well, on the surface, that might seem like a useful thing to do, based on the idea that if we learn how a problem is caused, we may be able to prevent it from reoccurring in the future. However, searching for the cause of a problem in families only works if participants can separate searching for a cause from searching for someone to blame. If determining the cause of something results in blaming someone, we might have a huge waste of time. A problem simply means that a solution needs to be found. Most problems reveal that we need to learn or change. They may mean that we are not well informed or well trained. Problems also invite the genius in us to emerge and our opportunity to increase our contribution, at least at work. Unless they are repeated as the result of our ineptitude, problems are opportunities to demonstrate new abilities if we're solution-oriented. Now let's consider this situation at home. At home, problems can be viewed in the same way. They are indicators that something needs to be learned and someone needs to change and grow. In many instances, they are a source of vitality for marriage if their solutions strengthen the marriage relationship. Faced with complex difficulties, many married couples are so hurt and angry they cannot let go of their need to avoid responsibility or place blame long enough to find a solution. Now, surprisingly, highly satisfied couples report the same number and kinds of problems as very unsatisfied couples. The difference is that people who are unsatisfied with their marriage believe they have no way of solving their problems and despair of ever breaking out of their difficulties. Becoming more efficient or making better use of people time at home, therefore, means that we use a solution orientation to solve our family problems. Well, suppose two children are arguing and the increasing intensity requires you to do something. If you applied the idea of good use of people time, you would focus little attention on who started the argument or who caused it. No attempt would be made to blame or find fault. Instead, you could stop the argument by inserting yourself into the discussion and requiring that the argument stop. Having practiced this for several years, I've developed several stopping techniques, including telling children to stop, touching both of them and moving them to separate chairs, singing in a very loud voice to distract them, and very intensely and firmly commanding that they do, in fact, stop. Next, I've had each child describe what has happened. You can require that each child listen to the other. In most cases, this will include only a brief description of what happened and will consist mostly of a thinly veiled attempt to absolve themselves from any responsibility. But after you try it a few times, you will get a better picture of what happened and can explore the consequences for everyone involved by asking, well, what did this do to you? How did you feel? What did it do to someone else? Now, a pivotal point has been created. You can search for the responsible party or for a solution. It's your choice. In most cases, it is much more efficient to search for a solution. You might say, well, we need to solve this. We need to find something that will help each of you feel satisfied. I would like to know what each of you wants. The solution might be a promise, an apology, a compromise, or a bargain. A good solution involves something from each participant. It also might be some conditions you set with consequences attached. For example, you might ask the two to jointly perform some small task for which you would give them a reward if they do it well. You might have them spend some time with you while you are working on a project. The point is that you are using your time efficiently to create something which will satisfy all parties involved. Now let's consider something called the warmth quotient. It is the nature of childhood that play, frustrations, chores, and conflicts empty out emotional reserves, or emotional buckets. For adults, it is work, other people's problems, conflict, and pressures. If left unresolved, whatever their nature, these problems worsen. Therefore, it is a wise use of time to find ways of filling emotional buckets so they stay full or do not remain empty for long. Doing this requires the efficient use of affection, warmth, praise, and recognition. Combined, these experiences make up your warmth quotient, the intelligent use of family time. Now, I'm not proposing that you whisk in and out, or that you say, okay, this is your 5 seconds, then somebody else's. It's not that. I am proposing instead that you actually make yourself into a person who expresses warmth and expresses it openly and freely, instead of somebody who closes that off because you're tired, exhausted, filled with stress, or have too much to do. The choice is clear. Our daily lives require the expenditure of energy, which reduces the amount we have available to us. There must be some method of replenishing. For children, the principal method is a certain type of experience with their caretakers. And for us, it is a certain type of experience with children, friends, spouses, and coworkers. This might be a new thought to those who think being with people is taxing and requires too much additional energy. It might also be new for you if you are not a demonstrative parent and you find it difficult to express warmth and affection. Well, most people replenish themselves through the expression and experience of warmth. There are many forms of it. The more you can freely use to participate in an expression, the more efficient you will be with it. Then, when you can express and display it with the members of your families, the more likely we are to feel content and refilled. After dinner one evening, I was sitting in my study feeling exhausted and frustrated with my career. I was alone thinking I needed time away from people. After all, I thought to myself, I am with people all day long and I deserve something else. In fact, it's a good idea to have a hobby that doesn't involve what we do during the day. I sat in this misery for a few minutes before I noticed the sounds of my children playing just outside my door. My first impulse was to shoo them away so that I could have some peace. Then I thought, if I continue doing what I am doing now, my children will come to believe their dads go to work all day and come home to sit alone in some darkened room. Not wanting that, I arose and went out to see what they were doing. It was not too difficult to see, and then it was more easy to join with them because I didn't have much interest or energy. But they accepted me, thankfully, and soon we were playing with each other. Some of the tiredness left me, and as I watched their faces and listened to their laughter, I could tell they enjoyed being with me. I began to feel a very different set of feelings as my small wounds of the day melted away. It was then that I discovered I need them as much as they need me, and maybe more. On subsequent nights, I came home to get from them what I needed to help me replenish and what I gave out each day, and it changed the way I thought about my children and coming home. And it was then I discovered that I need them much, much more than they needed me. I also realized that I had already missed too much of their lives. The motive to provide for them was strong, and I felt more sharply the conflict between needing to do whatever was necessary to accomplish that and the desire to be with them. I learned that I needed to find ways to maximize the time we had together so I could fill myself up, to fill my bucket up with my children so I would be a pleasant source of enjoyment for them. I felt love and tenderness for each of them, but I realized I needed to express it better, and it was the expression of that which helped me, and I hope it helped them, and I hope it will help you. I learned, frankly, to express warmth more often with my children and my wife, and it's made a huge difference. This might not apply to any other man or woman, but I believe it does, so I'll share it. I examined my schedule and eliminated things not central to obtaining a family income. Then after getting a little more time, I began to look for ways to be more positive and affectionate with them. I became more involved in getting them ready for bed, helping with homework, and talking about their concerns. Now, while these activities were taking place, I learned to use them as ways of expressing affection and warmth and receiving their affection and warmth from them. 3 of my sons shared a large bedroom and they were young, and we put them together because we wanted them to become buddies and so on. So we developed a following routine with them. We said our prayers each evening, then I tucked each of them in like a mummy in their bed covers. Then I laid by a different child each night and told a story. I made up stories, mixing and combining nursery rhymes. I was amazed at the number of stories that included witches, for example. I also made up stories that included my children as important characters and actors in the stories. Sometimes we talked afterward, but usually we just ended with a kiss and a hug. To this day, however, they tell me they sleep with their arms tucked under their bed covers because of the time I told them a bedtime story about a monster who cut off children's arms who were staying out of the covers. My wife put their school papers by my plate at the evening meal, which allowed me to review and recognize the good things my children were doing. Eventually, we shut off the TV in the evenings so we could have more time for homework and conversation. Frankly, that was hard for me because I like to sit, to do nothing, and watch TV. However, as every confirmed TV watcher knows, television is limited in how much it can replenish us. Through these family conversations, our children began to tell of their experiences. We sometimes laughed and talked well into the night. We played all kinds of games, so many that I can't remember them all. I learned that they filled my life and made it possible to come home tired and be able to get up the following day to return to work with energy and interest. Instead of avoiding them, I learned to seek them out. I needed them, as I hoped they needed me. I look back now on those days, and I realize it was warmth, affection, and tenderness that made the time efficient. Emphasizing these things made it less necessary to face childhood arguments or frustrations. It became more likely that children obeyed and helped with the dinner dishes and other chores that they often avoided or were frustrated at. As parents, my wife and I still had some problems with them, but they happened far less often. More of our time was filled with what brought us happiness, and there was less strain for all of us. Now, many years later, I can say that they have carried forward those same qualities into their adult lives and in their families. Learning how to be good at using people time is an important quality so that we do not allow our careers to hurt our children.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Do What Matters Most, which is sponsored by FirstAnswers.com, where you can find new tools for families and parents of 21st century kids with a focus on emotional self-reliance. Visit FirstAnswers.com to sign up for a free newsletter. Find Do What Matters Most on Facebook and our website, mattersmostmedia.org, where you can ask Dr. Scoresby your own questions. Remember to subscribe to stay up to date with new episodes. Give us a rating and write a review on the podcast app or Google Podcasts and let us know what you think about Do What Matters Most.